to change here. Okay, where did we stop last week, Madam Dina? Let's start with Dina. Where did we stop? Don't forget that final exam is boiling. You've got a few weeks to go, right? So, you assignment. You figure due to the group, then go what's portal. We have a problem in the portal, which you have noted. I'm not a fan of a portal. So, okay, so hey, let's see how far we can go as we look at what we did last time and how far we. Right. Here, last time we were looking at what we call transactional analysis. I think after looking at transactional analysis, we shall quickly look at two other theories, a developmental theory and also a personality theory. It may not be today, but in next session, we will look at two critical theories, and the remaining 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we finish up and start looking at what we can get during the exam. As I said, the exams are already boiling, so we need to be serious about that. Okay. Oh, next year you'll be in fourth year? Eh? Yes. The school in my end at Saka. Why? Mukapeza all over. Mukapeza all over, there's no problem. Mukati peza so, interview kwina kwacha, kuita naza peza tilipo. Yes. Okay. So I said that transactional analysis as a theory is much more of a communication theory that looks at how individuals firstly transact their communication and also how that can be translated into behavior and actions, including reactions of that particular individual. So transactional analysis theory is about the behavior of an individual in the context of communication. And I said that we look at 3, 4, 5 areas within transactional analysis. One of those is the actual individual person. As an individual, how do you respond to your interaction with your other individual? What type of behavior do you show or exhibit? And also, what happens when two people meet? The issue of perception and also the issue of motivation as to why, as an individual, you really think about communicating. I gave an example last time. Two people meet, two strangers you have never met before in your life, and you meet. Can you talk? Two people you have never met in your life and you meet. What happens? There must be a motivation behind what you want to do. If you want to communicate, then you can do that. Right. So that is about it. And also we looked at the actual basic issues within the transactional analysis, and we said that it's an integrative approach. I want to repeat. It's an integrative approach. You may get a question under transactional analysis, which not mention anything about transactional analysis. Right? A question which not mention anything about transactive or transaction analysis. But can you say, okay, using one of an integrative approach to something, how do you? And continue like that. So an integrative approach, psychoanalytic approach is an integrative approach to looking at issues of an individual behavior, including how the individual develops, and all sorts of things which are contained in that context. And including, remember last time we looked at the existential theory? Anybody who remembers it? No, I told you every day when you say yes, continue. Don't just say yes and stop there. That's not an answer. What is it? What does it say? Isabel. Hmm? The process whereby you know the person give a situation whereby you must exist as a human. Or the uncertainties about existence. That is all. Right. So use existential theory. Somebody who is worried about existence and doesn't know how can afford that one or be able to get that type of, will be in a state of depression or anxiety, right? So you can help that individual understand his situation, that is a normal situation, and therefore there's no need for panic and something like that. So here, that is what it is. So a transactional approach is an integrative approach. It uses several theories to bring together your understanding of a human being. And this is why 3/4 or 70% of what we talk about in the transaction analysis is much more of Freud Sigmund's theories coming around, right? Last time we looked at this, right? Last week, is it? Where did we stop? See if you can. That's where we stopped. Okay. All right. So this is how you would look at that. And also, what you must still understand is transactional analysis helps you to understand individuals' relationships, right? Based on the communication which goes on there. Now, when there are two people meeting, there will be issues of emotions, right? Issues of perception building and issues of impressions about the situation in which you people find yourselves in. And these are issues that can help you understand your service user. What it means is that the service user and the service provider, when you meet for the first time, I gave you a question, what happens? When you met Isabella for the first time, or when Isabella met you for the first time, what happened? You can't remember. What happened? Okay, maybe let me change the question to something simpler. When you came into class, right, and they said your lecturer is Mr. Kilembe, you don't even know him, and I walked in, what happened? Wovuta, okay. Jere, utamangisa mu class. Okay. Zina. Okay. Tabitha. What gave you the impression that in the Wovuta? Those are things. So, where people meet for the first time, there's that communication. It's silent communication, right? And that silent communication, actually, it is you and myself measuring each other. That's what happens. So I come in here, I said, Mr. Clem expected some very hefty, whatever it is, middle, height, and whatever it is, maybe, yeah man, we need to find an old man coming, frail and old, coming around. Now what we advertise. Karamba is the voter into that. Yes. That's what must have come to your mind. And at the same time, when I moved in, quickly look at the faces. As an experienced individual in my field, I could tell, here I have a problem in this one. In this one, I think he'll never listen, he'll be doing these things. That one, I think that one, yes, all those things. So that when I go out, I never knew your names, right? It takes a long time to know who is Gilbert, who is this, who is Isabella, who is what. It takes a long time. Now, in the end, I start attaching the name to the behavior that I created, right? So I say, okay, this is Eric, this is how he is. This is Isabella, this is that one, and all sorts of things. Then I go beyond just your name and whatever it is. Also to understand how you speak, how you answer, how you hold yourself, right? And if you go beyond how you think, how you analyze, how you don't analyze, how you fail to understand, I can tell somebody who is able to follow me or is not able to follow me, who is lost, and I have to get that individual come back. Just let me pick up this very important call here. Okay.
Then switch off your mic.
Yeah, I will. Okay. So my understanding you goes beyond just what I see in you here. Then it translates into the papers. When I look at the papers, I know what's written. Without seeing the name, I can tell. How? The communication which is there. Because how you communicate to me here is basically how you communicate when you are writing in your papers. I can tell. This is English ya Eriki. Yachi Burundi, George. This is English ya Gilbert, something like that. This is English ya Jere. Yachi business. Joncho. So it's easy to understand an individual from that point of view. So transaction analysis, why it is important for you as social workers, is that when you meet, you remember, I said, when you are getting your service user with you, the important thing is to understand, go beyond the physical being of that individual into the mind of that particular individual. That's what it's supposed to be, right? And when you are doing your communication, I think your second year or first year, second year, right? Communication skills. I think you looked at two types, verbal and non-verbal communication. Each one of those with its own advantages and its own disadvantages, right? What are the two advantages of non-verbal communication? Second one? Second one? Second one? Okay, it requires skills. So that's a disadvantage or an advantage. So what you mean is that if you having skills is a disadvantage for a social worker?
No, it's not a disadvantage. To communicate
to do that, to decipher, to get the meaning from what is supposed to be there. And the other biggest disadvantage is that it gives you a complicated, confused view of how you understand the emotions of that particular individual, right? If you can't communicate verbally, you may not understand his feelings, right? Or he may show you feelings which are contrary to what the person as an individual is, right? Because the other guy may be thinking that you are underrating that particular individual because of the condition which that individual is in. That's why they are always very rough. They are not rough. They are rough because they are not able to really understand us, or you are not able to understand them. So that gap creates that type of behavior in them and the roughness in them because of that. So in transactional analysis, what we're talking about is you must be able to understand your service user, get inside his mind, and what is the issue. That's why we say transactional analysis is a communication technique to understand the behavior of an individual and also how that individual can be helped. When we're looking at this, we looked at some goals of transactional analysis. I want each one of you to give me one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mpase artist 1, 1, 1, 1. Zikakanika 1, 1, 1, 1. 4 goals. They are not the only goals, but they are at least some of those. There are many. Goals of what? Transactional analysis. Why do you? How do you know that? How do I have them here? Who says I never mentioned those? Isabella, can you prove that I never? Are you serious? Can you prove? I want facts, evidence. Now, evidence I have it here. Slide number 6. Here. So where is the evidence? Don't you tell me that I missed all these things around. Okay. So transactional analysis as a method is a method that we use to understand people's behavior. That's one thing. By analyzing the transaction and the interactions. So it's an transaction and interaction. What is interaction? Gilbert? Interaction is Boston? What is interaction? Yeah. So interaction is communication. Anybody else? Eric? What is interaction? Interaction? Yes. To talk. Okay. Yeah. So interaction is to talk. And exchanging. No. Interaction is not only communication, but meeting at a point of where you meet, right? To interact. So you can interact without talking. It's possible, right? You can mingle and commingle without talking to anybody around. It's possible, right? Now, that too has a very serious and important implication in social work. We shall see when we move on to look at the developmental theory, I think next week, how interaction becomes very, very important. We have talked about issues of personality, we have talked about issues of introverted or extroverted individuals, something like that. These can easily be understood through interaction, how people interact and something like that, right? As you are here as a group, if I were to remove Eric here, put him in room 3, where they have Hope Msukwa and the journalism students, he may become very quiet, never talk to anybody, because he will be very new there, right? So an interaction brings in that type of relationship. Interaction brings that type of relationship. And you go back to a casework relationship is about how you interact with individuals and how you communicate and how you actually understand one another. Now here, the goals for transactional analysis are: 1, they are there to increase our awareness. One of the goals of transactional analysis is to increase our awareness of our own ego states. That's first thing, and that of other people. Understand our own ego states and that of other people. And you remember, when I look at the ego states, I mentioned that we have 3 types. Did I, Isabel? Yes. And that there's quite a lot of implication. If you follow all those 3, I call them the pack. Tabitha, I said our ego states, I put them into what I call the pack. Do you remember, or can you tell us what these are? We shall get to those. Okay. But we like to put them as pack. There's nobody here. I can't go here. Okay, let me do that. The pack. This is how they are. And all these, as we proceed, we shall see what they mean and their role in actual transactional analysis. How would you understand your service user based on how you understand those parent ego states, right? Is it possible for something somewhere to find an individual who's an adult but behaves like a child? Mati mwanadala, whatever it is, I don't know what it means by mwanadala, whatever it is. What is mwanadala in Chichewa? Or in Chitumbuka? Okay, what is it? Go ahead. She doesn't even know what it is. No, ask her, Isabella, she'll tell you. What do you mean? What do you mean by mom so cool? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, you said what? Okay. Isabella and Dina have given us very interesting definitions of that from Chicha viewpoint, right? And we're looking at it from the ego state viewpoint. Mwanadala, he says, mtu osa kura. Okay. When talk about Mwanadala. Okay, that's a very good way of also putting it. Now, when we talk about you're looking at the ego states, see your chat and you say Mwanadala, right? You go beyond the physical that you see, right? Into the mind of the individual. So somebody will be saying Mwanadala because of the way he behaves, right? It's an adult, but things that it does are pure of a child type, something like that, right? And I don't know. He said, that's another issue which is difficult to define, right? Or, okay, I have my black hair, my white hair, then I start tinting it to black. That's being, you ought to just to go backwards to where you are not supposed to be. Just be where you are and proceed, right? I hope you guys will give me my birthday this November, coming in November, Chuan. Tizaona ndani, azani pasi. Zach, how old are you? 22. Okay. All right. You say what? You're just telling this. Which one? No. You asked me how old I was. Yes. I asked you how old I am. Times 2. Times 3. Times 3, not 40. No. I'm not a monada. Times 3. Yes. 67 actually. Yes. Then you're going to get monada, right? All right. Now, as we proceed to look at our transaction analysis and the goals, we said it's about how you understand yourself, which you said is your ego state, and that of your individual that you are dealing with. What it means that in your relationship with your service user, right, you must understand yourself and be able to understand your service user so that you are able to get the benefit of what your service user is going to say to you. And all these things take us back to our casework. You remember in casework 1, it was the methods and other things. Casework 2, it was the application. And the transactional analysis is one of those applications in casework, right? Understand the behavior of your service user and yourself Then using principles of casework, how do you make that individual to start giving you information? Now, those are the casework relationships, the trust, confidentiality, and all sorts of things, something like that, including the self ability to express oneself and something like that. And the number 2 goal for transactional analysis is that you must be aware of 2 things, which you shall come across very, very shortly. The social and psychological messaging. The social and psychological message which exists between you two in your communication process. The social and psychological messages. What we are saying is, do you think between 2 people there's a communication? Yes, verbal, non-verbal, right? Number 2, when you exchange those types of messages, what type of messages are they? There'll be a social message and there'll be a psychological message. Eric, what does that mean? Social message and a psychological message.
The behavior might be caused just because of the environment where, or the people which the user might be interacting with, and the behavior can also be caused just because of the mind or the thinking capacity.
Okay, we are almost there. But the issue is, we shall see as we proceed, the social message and the psychological message, right? It's something that we just know and something that we understand. So let's wait until we get there. So this is another objective for transactional analysis approach. You have to understand the social message and the psychological message. And the social message and psychological messages will only be best understood from the interpretation of the ego states of yourself and that of your service user. And also, there will be another goal is the increase in your complementary transactions, or complementarity in your transactions. We shall also come across that as a goal. I'm going to unpack it as we proceed. What is complementary transaction, right? And what is arterial transaction? What is a complementary transaction in transactional analysis? We shall look at this, and when I start mentioning these small terms around, be careful. Those are signs. Those are signs. Because for me to understand that you really understood transactional analysis as a theory, small things like that. Complementary transactions, what is it? Simple question. Even if you can't answer now, but you'll answer. That's the best way to put it. Right? And number 4, it helps us to understand what we call the triadic personality structure. Look. That's why Tabitha will say about Sinduma Mvota. That's the simple thing. Triadic personality structure is a structure that defines the personality of an individual. That is all. We shall also look at that when we unpack personality. What is it? We'll talk about triadic personality structure. What is it? Last time, I mentioned about personality as something which constitutes your behavior, right? And your mind and your brain and your process, your thoughts processes, right? And in an environment. Tri is a triangle, right? So the triadic personality structure actually revolves around this. But what we're going to do is, in next lesson, I'm going to actually expound on personality. What is personality? We are going to look at that. You cannot deal with a service user if you don't understand what personality is, right? And you can be dealing with an individual who actually is affected by what we call the dark triadic personality structure. So you must understand what personality is and what the triad is. That one I just showed you tells us about our personality. But inside that, we're going to unpack, there'll be quite a lot of issues involved in that, right? So that we'll say personality is what? Is it your character? Or what is it? Right? So we shall be unpacking that just to understand how this is. Clear, Dina? November 12, tayari kujafika. What are you going to say? You tell us a story. Okay. So as I mentioned last time, when you look at transaction analysis, pure Freud, Sigmund Freud influenced, and also it looks at what I mentioned last time. It brings in what we call the social intercourse. Now, social intercourse, like any other type of intercourse, is an emotional attachment, right? Where you're emotionally attached. What it means that if you're dealing with your service user, there must be that development of emotional connectivity, or connectedness rather, the social intercourse part of what is going to happen between the two of you. That is only, that's the only way that you are going to bring about change in your service user. When we started off, I mentioned about two things why we use transactional analysis. Isabella, one, Ulem, two. One, Isabella, two, Ulem. What did I say? Transactional analysis, apart from the goals that I've given you here, aims at two things. Okay, I'll leave it. I'll leave it. It gives me an indication of what we can do. You will answer. Okay. Two things. Change in an individual, right? I'm not talking about change. It could be behavioral, whatever it is, and something like that, right? General change in an individual. Number two, growth. In a personal growth and change. Two things. How? That's what you're supposed to be telling me. Why personal change and growth? And growth there. Anybody? Why personal change and personal growth? Boston, Gilbert, Eric, Tawonga. Of course, I know you're not here. You're not here. Just like Madam Jerry. You guys have traveled. Right? Come back. Come back. Come back. Come back. Dunam. See you. Yes, you are here, but you are not here. You are not here. In social work, why there is social work is because we assume that an individual is in a state of dysfunctionality, right? And why social work intervention is because we want to bring about that change in an individual, right? To be able to realize the situation in which that individual is in so that that individual can change to take a positive way of looking at life of that particular individual. Now, in transactional analysis, as a psychological approach, we're looking at the issue of behavior. You remember I mentioned that one, right? And issues of communication. And issues of relationships. That's why I mentioned about the issues of social intercourse there, right? There's the issue in the social relationships, there's the issue of interaction, and there's the issue of transaction. How you relate to one another, that's interaction. How you communicate to the other individual and do things that you are supposed to do, that's transaction, right? So interaction and transaction, they come in here. These are the things that we'll be looking at in transactional analysis. That's it. Now, in social work, we're looking at these two. individual growth in a person and change. Gilbert, why do you think so? Anybody? Eric, why do you think so? When we talk about change in an individual or growth in an individual, what would these mean? These two terms mean? Applying your small piece of social work that you have covered so far, from casework, from whatever it is, whether it's from group work, it will still be about these two things. Community change, community whatever it is, growth, and all those things around. It's because we are dealing with the individual mind. That's what gives us the behavior of an individual, right? As interpreted by the environment in which that individual is in. That clear? Now, if you are dealing with a service user in social work, and you are using whichever theory you're going to use, now we're just unpacking and adding more theories to you that you're going to use out there. We have probably in excess of 3,000 theories that you can use in social work at any one point where you're trying to deal with a service user. And the transactional analysis is one of those, alongside the behavioral, cognitive, existential, humanistic, geostat, and all those theories that you have around. You can see there are plenty, Isabel. So here, change in the individual mind. How does the individual process his thoughts? And Eric, we mentioned last time that our human mind operates at two levels. Anybody? Two sides. And Sigmund Freud told us that we have two sides. Right? And it's very easy to connect these two sides. Very easy. Last night I had a class with the online students on the same subject matter, and it was so beautiful. There are two sides which you really must understand. And when you talk about change and growth, your mind must go quickly to what Freud says and what we have. Two sides. One, wonderful, is the conscious, and naturally the unconscious, right? And number three, the one who gives me number three, we already have 10% marks ready, given now. And we sign a contract that that one will be there. So you'll be going in a class with 10 already on your side. The third one, Isabella, I'm challenging you. Let's go. Are you serious? No. Who said ego? Huh? Okay. Now, we have the conscious, right? The unconscious, right? And the pre-conscious. Right? Now, out of these three, they mean something. You have the conscious, unconscious, and the pre-conscious. But when you look at Sigmund Freud, of course, he brings in these things around. But we have always mentioned about the unconscious and the conscious part of your thoughts, right? Where they meet or where they don't meet, and how you can manage those things to bring about change in an individual's thoughts, individual things, right? That's what we have already said. Now, here, what makes you know that you have conscious, unconscious, or preconscious state? Now, guys, are going round and round, same things that we have covered. What makes you understand that? The conscious and all these three things. What makes you understand that? What?
Personality.
Okay, I said personality, right? How? Go ahead. You could be right. You could be very wrong. Okay. Let's see.
So the issues of personality brings the notion of self-awareness.
Wonderful. What you are talking about here is issues of the self. You remember? I've emphasized on that quite a lot of times, right? And here, awareness. That's what it is, simple. So you find that your conscious state, your unconscious or preconscious state actually revolve around your level of awareness. When you talk about the self-awareness, is your own identities, your own personality, your weaknesses and your strengths, right? Your capabilities to cope with a situation as it comes. And when we're dealing with an individual in casework or in social work, we're talking about issues of capabilities. Not so. That's the growth. What the capabilities are available to an individual to grow out of the problem that afflicts this particular individual. Personal-centered, for example. It's a growth approach. True or false? But you can say true because it's me. Mukati true, then I'll be very happy. Right? But do you think it's true? Is a personal-centered a growth approach or a change approach? Is personal-centered approach a change or a growth phenomenon? It is both. It is both. Oh, your boss said it is both. Eh? No, but okay, you're right. It is both. In an individual where we are using a person-centered approach is to change his mindset, right? To understand the situation better as an individual and how that individual can manage that situation as it prevails or as it presents itself. It's the growth part where an individual has literally no idea and they're building that individual the capabilities to grow and understand. First, has to understand, change, and grow. This is how it is. So here, you find that you have what we call the conscious awareness and preconscious awareness. Come out like that. So in transactional analysis, just even in a psychoanalytic approach or psychodynamics, we look at this state of an individual's mind. What would be a preconscious state or preconscious awareness be like? Eric, what would it be? Precocious. Something pre is what? Something which is pre is what? Excuse me? Somebody saying something somewhere. Okay, so pre is before. Okay. I want to understand the Taonga.
Yes.
Taonga said before. Okay. So, how do you create a consciousness before consciousness? Isabella, here we are. How do you have the consciousness before consciousness?
Through thought processing.
So,
When you are trying to.
okay, you leave it here. Don't bother. We'll come back to that and see what it is. Right. So here, in the transactional analysis, then we look at three issues. We have three issues that we look at. Transactional stimulus, transactional response, and transactional an agent who sits in as part of the transactions. All right, and we stopped where we were looking at the ego states. Is that so? That's where we stopped, right? Yes. Can I start from there and we see how we move out? And as we proceed, we actually are going even to look at those issues coming out very, very clear. Maybe here, let me try to explain the preconscious and so forth by, unfortunately, we're not beaming around. It was going to be great. I was going to look at the transactional analysis side by side with the psychoanalytic approach. You see how they tend to cross, right? and where they meet. And according to Sigmund Freud, the preconscious state of consciousness, which is before, is quite interesting. How can you have something before? Where does it come from? Simple question. Visualizing. How can you come something before and you have it affecting you? Is it possible? Is it possible? Now we're talking about the ego state, we're talking about the pack, right? Where do we get the pre-conscious state in an individual? The pre-conscious state in an individual, if we're going to go back to the psychoanalytic approach, which I think I've also explained so well, I think I was dealing with the online last night on transactional, on psychoanalytic and the psychodynamic, where these things try to cross. The pre-conscious state is built through as a script, and this gets into our memory boxes. So it goes into our memory boxes and is never available to us, right? So it is created. We'll talk about a script we shall see when we move on to that. It's things that as you grow in the child ego state, as a child you are growing up, do you create a world for yourself? When you're growing up, do you have a picture of a world that you think the world is supposed to be like? I can give you an example. I live by the road. Maybe I've given you this example over and over again. I always have examples which are evidence-based. 2, 3, 4, I used to, when I was a bit free, 10, 11, 12, just be outside my gate walking around. Then you get school children coming from primary school. So they used to like some fruits in my yard, tangerine, and bring those out for free for children to eat as they're passing by. Then I'd be enjoying to check how each one of those move around. And when they have results to school, look at my results, look. Huh? The other will not be ready to show you. Yeah. So the one who says, look, did 79%, 80%. Somebody who's hiding, you check, 12% or something like that. That tells you a story. Yeah, what is it? Right? I'm just here, they all come, give them yeah, somebody just, no. That's one thing. Second issue, start asking them. Okay, okay. Wewe ukufuna kuti ukazakura uzakale ndani ntchito yako imene kuifuna kwambiri ukazakura. Small young boy, Eric, pay attention. These are examples that you need to. Is child very young growing up, I'm going to standard 4, 3, 4, 5. Ufuna uzakale ndani ukazakura. When I say, hey, inajipenda kufuna zangu kala God. And that's 4 years old. Zangu kala God, you know? No, it's not. Nichito. Nichito. Right? So he says, Funa Zakare God. Right? Now, you are trying to understand the ego state of that particular child, right? And here, he says, Zakare God. And you ask, Funa Zakare God, Sufuna Zakare Mpuzis. Kapenu Zakare doctor, Kapena Jantan, oh yeah. Na yao God man sangalasa mwambia. Chifukwa chani. Ali adadi ndia God kubeti makala kukweli ya 9 kwa mwenye. Then ama nisangalasa abwana kabwera ama tamanga usegula gate kuchita church. So you see those things, to me that's a very serious issue, right? It is a script. This is a script. That child, you have done your learning theories, right? That child is trying to be fixated. You remember our term? Yes. It's trying to get fixated. The script is getting fixated in that type of child. And that child is actually going to grow, is going to go into the memory box of that child, right? Whatever that child is going to do, he'll just be so interested in salute aja, and now he opens the gate. Zimaka chana, zimaka bunombe. Yupeza bwana kafika, mina mangu tu bread kwa kumpasira paja, kumpasa basi ndeti magari ya chana. Things like those. These are fixations. They're not simple things. For somebody who would have laughed, hey, mwaseka siyo che. That is not a funny thing. It is this. And you are social workers, you are looking at the issues of change, issues of growth. Now, in the transactional analysis, you have to look at how can you change the fixed memory of a script in a person. Get that, Eric? How can you change that fixed memory of the script in that particular child to change or to grow? That's an important issue. So the pre-conscious awareness is how you tap from your memories, old memories, specifically those that are generated during your childhood, right? The ego, the child ego, whatever state, right? Into something which is going to be positive to bring about change in that particular individual, right? So you can see what happens, right? And this is very, very simple. You ask another one, what do you do? What do you want to do this? And I used to ask my small boy when I was young, what do you want to become? Always, we just, games just, yeah? Utukaza kufuna chani maga, ukaza kufuna jani. Something like that, you know? And he says, no, funa nizapunzile. Nikazapunza zakare bwana. Ukati bwana tutata uza chani. Say, yes, basi bwana basi. Niza ukara mugari moto azindiendesa, you know? Something like that, right? That's a script. It's going. How did he know that bwana ama endesed wa mugari moto? Should have been through observation, should have been through modeling, all sorts of things, right? And those are very important issues to understand. So in a transaction analysis, you need to understand your service user from all those different angles. Is he scripted or fixated, rather, in a state in which this individual is in, right? There will be situations where, you remember, we looked at the issues of issues of defensive mechanisms, right? Yes. There are situations where an individual would use what we call regression, repression, displacement, whatever it is, right? Yeah. Or denial. All those things sometimes come as a script, right? Yeah. I do something wrong here, and I don't want to accept the reality, because defensive mechanism is a mechanism which protects an individual from external threat. And when we talk about external threat, we're talking about that threat from outside of yourself, outside of your mind, outside of your own personality. So I say, I see napanga ni Gilbert, right? Kuma natiola ndeka grass hapo pa, akunifuta matiola grass maja asini natiola ni Gilbert. What does that mean? I'm protecting myself from the external threat. The external threat could be a punishment, or a fine. I want to run away from that one, but I want to get it down to Gilbert. Is that repression, regression? What is it? Displacement? No. Regress, to regress, throw out, something like that. Check, you have the notes. Is it regression, whatever it is, and so forth. But a simpler term would be transference. You're just transferring your guilt and your actions into Gilbert. That is all. Because you want to protect yourself from these consequences of that action. That's what it is. Now, so here, when you look at the transaction analysis, look at it from those angles there and understand that in the ego state as we proceed, all things that you do now here, including myself, have a degree of our child ego state. Something somewhere. Something somewhere. Right? I had a friend in college a long time ago. Very intelligent and sharp guy. Economist. And after graduation, he said, I'm not going to work for anybody. That's all. I'm not to work for anybody. And up to now, Mrs. Odd has never worked for anybody. Says, why? He says, no, why? I've done my economics, I've been doing all these things, I've understood everything. Why can't I make my own money? Right? And it's all sometimes from the background. This guy had a father in their family. They are entrepreneurs, naturally. So it means he grew up in that environment, right? Yeah. He graduated, transformed his father's company into something very big company in Mzuzu. Very big company in transportation. Declared himself managing director. Right? And started managing the company so well, driving Porsche cars and everything and all sorts of things and employing so many people and paying them off. He made himself say, I told you, I'm not going to work for anybody. So I would still joke with him and say, but you are cheating yourself. You are still working for somebody. Why are you managing direct? Something goes wrong, you'll be fired, I'm very sure. Right? So we would laugh like that. And so all those are scripts, right? Things that you learn as you are going up, something like that. If I ask you, why you sell mandasi kuno? It's not going to get a lawyer. Kanali kina kachi kama mandasi somewhere. Okay, give us an example. There must be something. That's something mnyumba mjamo kina kachi hitting you. Basi yeah, it could be Maruz. And if you talk about Maruz, Zino na Maruz has not started with her. It means that's mnyumba moja. Maruz, gulise mfuku, Maruz, tipangi cha kuti, Maruz, tipangi cha kuti. And that gets you done. Sabira waseka baba. Yeah. So these are transactional issues, right? They pass on. Something like that. Let's look at our ego state. I think we looked at that. Let's proceed. And I did define to you what an ego state is. And that it's a pattern of feelings and experiences which are consistent and also directly related to the corresponding. That's an important part of it. What comes back goes back, right? If you are rude to me, I have the right to be rude to you. Something like that, right? Or vice versa. It will depend. And all these things come out as behavioral issues. And also, in any transaction, in most cases, there will be the win and lose approach, right? Are you winning or losing in that transaction? Let's see actually what happens when we move on. All right. Boston. Am I being very clear? Okay, I want you to be happy. Today, look, slightly happier. Right? Why? Why? Okay. I must say unpack what bueno bueno means. But like? Okay, require help for growth and change. Yes. Yeah, you can get your friends to help, or you can get help. Yeah. No, yeah, you must attend that one. Attend that one. You attend that one. I think from St. John of God, we're talking about psychosocial awareness and mental health. Okay. See what happens. It will be good to just listen and see what is happening. And give them as many questions as possible if you can. You have a lot of things to do. We'll be meeting us here at the department same time at 2 o'clock to prepare. But yeah, I can go there just to listen and see what is happening, how it is. Because the same subject, we understand it differently. How we understand this, how you understand this is different, right? So that is it. So the parent ego state, we said, is just how we learn from our parents and also to represent what we intend to probably have and show. And one of those things, the issue of nurturing, how you provide care and support and things like those. And also issues of sanctions. It's also part of the parent ego type of state. You cannot just leave your children free range like a mikorongwe chicken. There must be restrictions, disapprovals, and certain things. But I know when children grow up, they want that freedom. Very, very free, right? But freedom is not